Hello, Weymouth fifth graders. My name is John Belber. I'm here, and I'm outdoors at Holly Hill Farm in Cohasset, Massachusetts. We hope at some point during your elementary school career in Weymouth, you've had a chance to come down to the farm. Here we are at Holly Hill Farm in Cohasset. Wonderful organic vegetable, flower and herb farm, and we grow a lot of vegetables and we teach about vegetables. We've established a farm garden for growing food and flowers and vegetables at every Weymouth primary school. And we know that fifth graders, I believe now, are at the primary schools until their new school becomes ready as they're building and growing in Weymouth. We want to build and grow with you today for the garden. What can we do to help the garden out here in our efforts to deal with waste in the world, to deal with the food that plants need? How can we help? So, fifth grade, we want to talk about some science. We want to talk about some ways to integrate learning and growing here with a vermicompost bin. So I have nothing up my sleeve, fifth graders, except an empty bin that I bought at your neighboring Lowe's there in Weymouth. And the bin got little holes. I drilled little holes around the side. Maybe you can see that up close or not. And I put some holes on the top of the bin. What we'll be able to get in and out of this bin when there are holes there will be air. Air is an important component for us to build vermicompost. You might hear the word compost in there, and we might have talked in previous lessons, or you've seen about compost and how it's made from an old pile of leaves, or even manure from certain animals can turn into compost. We're going to do a concentrated, focused vermicompost bin. Verma with the word worm in there. Verma, you can almost hear that. So here's the empty bin. I cleaned it out from previous years, and I'm going to open it so we can put some things inside. We're going to follow a recipe, fifth grade. We're going to take ingredients and see how they change their matter. See how this ecosystem works together, and certain insects and invertebrate inside this bin will help us to make a finished product that's going to be good for the garden. Vermicompost, that's a big word to handle. And fifth graders, it's an important part of your frameworks to connect and understand about compost, and right here, it being wintertime, vermicompost. So, on a piece of paper here, I'll act like a scientist and take notes and record what's going to happen inside this bin. And we are going to make one bin every school so that we can observe and study how this vermicompost is made and what happens as these ingredients, these organic matter, change their makeup, their composition, and how they change their form into something else. So, first is the date. Today is Thursday, February 25th. I said we're going to make 8 bins. Today, we're going to focus on this one bin as an example, and the other 7 bins will be identical to this one, we hope, and the same results. So, Thursday, February 21st, 5th, I'm going to add, on the 25th today, some newspaper. I have read the news, good and bad. I have learned through nonfiction writing what is happening in the world, and I'm finished with it. Very often, fifth graders, I can take my newspaper, if I get it delivered at home, and I can recycle it. It's paper, it can be recycled, like a can or a bottle. This form of recycling today is going to be for our vermicompost. Can you see that I'm ripping it and tearing it into strips there? Those are going to go into the bin. Newspaper, I'm going to add another section here. I know that the paper I'm ripping from uses soy-based ink, so that's good and healthy for the worms that will be in here to help us make the compost, the vermicompost. They're castings. They're rich humus. So, we're trying to make a habitat for these worms. We're making a place for them to live to grow for food and for shelter, and we want them to do well and to be happy in this bin. So I'll write down on my sheet newspaper. So very often if I was in the classroom with you, I'd ask for someone to be a recorder to write down all the information, okay? So we know when we look at this bin in a few weeks' time, we'll see what happened to all the ingredients in here. Food. What else do living things need besides food? Shelter was mentioned, and water is important. Water is essential for every living creature. Us, bees, animals, and for the worms. So with a little reusable water bottle here, I'm going to add a little bit of water. Do I want to make a swimming pool in here? Probably not. Do I want to add too little water in here? No, I don't. I want to add the water and make sure that the paper is absorbing it and really has a chance to soak up all the water so that the worms, when they begin to live and grow in here, they'll have some water they need. There it is. I'm creating a nice little home right down here with good, moist, wet newspaper. Imagine a worm and how much they're going to need to drink. And we don't, as I said, want to make a pool in here or a pond or a puddle. They don't like that. Sometimes in rainstorms, if you see worms, they're not happy with all that mud and stuff coming up. They want a nice, well-balanced meal in here. So this carpet has been nice and moistened. So I'll make sure to add that too as an ingredient to our habitat, to our vermicompost bin. Water is down there as well. They need food. These worms that we're going to go in there need food to live. And this food that I brought here today is left over. So I'm going to bring out a few things at a time, or one thing at a time, to show you how I can divert some of this food. Here is something straightforward that you might recognize. It had a nice, delicious fruit full of potassium that was part of my breakfast the other day. Do you recognize this? Outside part of a banana. So it's a banana peel. It's gotten nice and dark brown on the outside. I put it in the freezer. That's to deal with any fruit flies that might be in the bin there. So I froze the banana peel, and now here it is. What could I usually do with this? Throw it away. Don't drop it on the ground. Someone might slip on the banana peel. So this can actually be used for something else, for our worms here. But look on the outside here, some subtle advertising. Chiquita Banana, that's the company that grew the bananas. It doesn't tell me, yes it does, Guatemala. So there's some work for our social studies to figure out where Guatemala is and where the banana grew and how far it came before it started growing, being part of our diet here. So this sticker here, I'm not going to put that in. It's papery, but it's also plastic involved in this banana sticker here. So I might save that for the trash because I don't want that to be part of our compost operation. Instead, I'll take this banana peel, and maybe just to make it easier for the worms, I'll separate into several different sections right here. Make sure to write down banana peel. All these fruits and vegetables I'm going to add today could go into the trash. They could go into a compost bin outside. But since it's winter time, nice day today, I want to be able to concentrate these vegetables in here so that we can see how it will benefit the worms. Next on the list, and all of you can guess out loud, 5th grade, here is an old bottom of a lettuce head, a head of lettuce. The restaurant that I picked this up from was able to use the rest of the lettuce in a sandwich or a salad, and here's the bottom part that the restaurant does not want to use, and maybe at home, if you think about making a vermicompost bin, and we will be doing this in the classroom with you, but we're doing it by video, would be able to use that. So I'm going to break apart some lettuce, head, bottom, I'll call it, the bottom part of the head right there. Next, more vegetable matter peeled off of the root crop that is a carrot. So I'm adding carrot peels to the vermicompost bin. Can you see I'm also creating wonderful, diverse colors, rich, healthy vegetables in here. Sometimes we're told to eat a rainbow to be healthy as human beings. I'd love the worms to be healthy too, so they make healthy compost, healthy vermicompost. That will be part of the end result. So, carrot peels. All right, I'm taking good lists here. Next, you're getting an insight a bit into my home life and how my daughter makes wonderful fried egg sandwiches. Check this out, this part of the egg. The egg is gone. It was used to make a sandwich. Inside, nothing is left but the shell. Can you hear the crackle of the shell? Do you think breaking it apart is going to make it easier for the worms? This is a good matter for them to work on. So I'm going to leave some eggshell in here. Good calcium, I think, right? To add for the worms. Make sure I take my notes. Eggshell, grade 5. If you're keeping record at home of what we're doing. Eggshell. Okay. Another insight here to the restaurant that makes a whole bunch of guacamole and uses good, healthy avocado. Here's the inside pit that some people might use as a seed. Put some toothpicks in there and rest that in water to see if that will take root and grow. I'm going to add avocado and pit into the vermicompost bin. Avo, peel and pit. And here is a nice piece of fruit holding seeds on the inside. Do you see how this is a yellow pepper plant? A yellow pepper, the leftover part, the rest of the pepper's been used elsewhere. But this is going to change its form. It's going to change its matter. The worms and thyme and the ingredients in here are going to work to change its form into something else. So remember, we're putting in a yellow pepper and seeds. Okay? What else do I have here? Oh, along with the guacamole, some cilantro. The bottom parts here that could go into trash, but no, we're going to recycle it into this bin right here. Some cilantro. All right, we've got a nice, healthy meal in here for the worms. Two more things on this end. Some bottom parts of tomatoes. We think of these in summertime and early in fall when the tomatoes are ripe on the vine. Here they are from the restaurant in wintertime. We're going to put them right in here. Again, more color, more ingredients that are going to change their form, change their matter. Tomatoes or tomatoes. One more big item. Can I put the whole item in here? Yeah, we'll take a look at this. I open up here. This is a delicata squash. It's a winter squash. If we've grown a Three Sisters planting before of corn, beet, and squash, delicata is a good example of a winter squash. I want to show you, though, the inside. Thank you, though, Janice, to see seeds. And we have talked about seeds before, Weymouth, and we can talk about seeds again. The farmers right now are busy with seeds in the greenhouse. Seeds are great for planting. Right now, it's begun to rot. It's begun already to decompose with its mold and its discolorization there. So I'm going to put this right into the compost bin. Delicata squash. Not good for eating anymore, but fine to continue its decomposition. It's rotting. At home, if you're involved in cooking, you can take leftover parts and create a vermicompost bin or figure out where compost is happening outside. Restaurants, so many places have these ingredients. Here we're trying to be thoughtful and mindful with where to put these items. Delicata squash. Okay, those are the main ingredients right there. To review, newspaper with water so that we have a source of water for the worms that are going to go in there. The worms are going to like to have a little bit of grit. It'll be good for them as they ingest to have a little bit of ground up sand. You know that soil is made up of different components? Sand, silt, clay, compost. So you see a bit of dirt and rock in there is going to go in there for the worms so they can have things to chew on and items that will help give some good chew and grit into their digestive system. So with that grit in there, it's going to be good for the worm's gizzard. And while we're talking about the worms, I want to show this to you, and we are sending different information to the teachers so they can help follow up with this lesson. But here's the inside anatomy of a red wiggler worm. A red wiggler worm exists in many different compost piles. It loves to be indoors. It does not like the cold. So another reason why we're using the red wiggler worms in wintertime, and why I'm going to ask you to keep this habitat in a safe spot during the winter months, because we still are in winter. So here, the inside gizzard is up there too. So they like that grit and that sand and that rocky bit for their gizzard. Here are the red wiggler worms before I show you the food web of what's inside this pile. And look, all nestled in here. If you listen carefully, 5th grade, you might even hear them wiggle. Red wiggler worms. They're all huddled together. I don't know if I have time to count all the worms that are in here. It's a little collection, and they are happily already producing some castings. What they have, a kindergartner might say, poop out, is their castings, that rich humus that's come out of the worm through the worm and out the other side. So I'm going to take these worms and place them in their new habitat. We are designing a compost system right here in this little bin. 5th graders are asked statewide to design a compost bin, a compost system to deal with waste, to deal with organic matter. So all the worms, ever so gently, are going into this new habitat that we have designed and we are making here together, virtually, safely, during a pandemic. And imagine all the newspaper that I put in here, all the fruits and vegetables, different things, depending on what different worms like to eat, just like human beings. They're going to find lots of different places to move and wiggle and travel to. We've created a lot of different topographical areas inside this bin right here so they can work the newspaper, move over to the grit, slide through the avocado pit, go into the squash to find those seeds and parts there. Imagine in an outdoor compost pile or in this bin, the food web that's in there. We all have a food web. There's a web of life that animals follow. Here's our food web for the inside of a compost bin. Primarily right now, all we've put in here are the worms. We'll have to look for worm eggs later on to see what else happens with the worms and what other results and different forms of matter are inside this bin. So, add to my list, grit, that we put in there, the sand, clay, rock, and the worms. Okay, so before we tuck this bin away in a cool, dry, dark spot, not too hot, not too cold, we're going to think about really what these worms are going to do. And I mentioned going into the food, and they're really looking for the bacteria. Now, those fruits and vegetables that I put in here, they've already begun to rot and decompose a bit. They already are forming bacteria. Bacteria that is probably beneficial, and bacteria that the worms will actually work to digest and to work through. So as decomposers, the fruit and vegetables are decomposing and the worms work as decomposers. But right now they're going to work on the bacteria that is formed from this rotting fruit, from these rotting vegetables, and this torn up newspaper. So here's another layer of protected newspaper. I doubt they'll have time to read the news, and instead they will be all protected in here as these decomposers, these red wiggler worms, get set to make some good, rich vermicompost for the garden. Here's our list of ingredients that we'll look at in a few weeks' time to see how well the worms did. There's our habitat. Do I want this to be in the hot, warming sun where increased daylight is happening every day? No. Do I want to put this in a cold, cold barn behind me at the farm where it gets below freezing at night and warms up a bit during the day? No, I do not. I want a cool, dry place. So, Our science directors in Weymouth and our classroom teachers are going to each be able to have one bin for each school, and fifth graders will keep an eye on this bin. We might check it periodically to see how the decomposition is happening. Happy growing, happy food diversion, and scientifically having a nice finished compost bin engineered to make vermicompost for the garden, for the environment. Thank you, fifth grade. Happy growing.